Hello folks, I'm Ellie Little and this is your daily TA wrap. We take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective each time, asking ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about tomorrow. You know, I do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the Rocky Mountains. Folks, I'm glad you could join me tonight. As far as these markets, it is a Teflon market. This thing will not go down for anything. And today was no exception. Market rolls along. Got a slight pullback in one of the 4 indexes. That was the Dow, the weakest one. But the Nasdaq, the NDX, much higher. Russell picks up a little steam. S&P was flat. What happened? Well, overnight, Asia sells down big, especially China. Also got a pretty good clip on Japan. European markets sell down. It wasn't as if all the economic news was driving it this time, although Europe gave us some numbers that were a little bit lagger than one would desire. The real issue is geopolitical again, with the tentative referendum / vote this Sunday in Crimea region. That seems to be really where the pressure is coming from, is keeping these markets on their toes. We had gold up huge today, breaks out again. It won't come back in. It's 1368 now, and silver actually pushed higher but couldn't hold it. They're off a little bit after hours. Dollar was down again, but you know, and copper was down one more time. But the story in my mind is not what is happening in other markets. It's this market, and this market simply won't sell down. So I'm bringing up the S&P here, and what I want to show you, I want to bring your attention back to, is this region right now is a support zone, and it's off that high, and actually we didn't quite reach that high, that zone on the S&Ps, although we did it elsewhere. S&P's a little bit lower, so we just missed it here. If you remember the first trip back after a breakout, right, that's called a retest regenerate, because it comes back and it tries to retest that area of which it broke over. And then, if it holds, it regenerates higher, and that is what we saw here and elsewhere. We saw it here, we saw it at the Nasdaq, we saw it at the Russell. Then when it comes back again, right, it's no longer a retest regenerate zone. That's already happened. But many times it will be a support zone, and that is what has been created at this price level using this bottom of this bar. That bar was the big juice on the way up. That's the March 4th bar. The bottom is 1849.23. We got down as low as 1854 today. We were down for about 15-20 minutes this morning on a gap down. They turned it around. They do a hammer reversal back up over yesterday's low. This thing's going to go back and test the highs again. And the good part is that volume, shrinks, sellers disappear as price push lower, right? That's telling you there's no sellers at lower prices. Nobody wants to leave the market, right? Now, that can certainly change, but right now, that is the story. It's the story loud and clear. Each time we test down, each time we come back into an area, there is no juice to turn this thing around. Today it was coming back into the Feb 24th bar. That was the bar that had volume. It tested that swing point high, tried to break out the first time. You had 40.1 there. You came back with 32.7, tested into it. Didn't quite get to the bottom of this bar. No juice. That thing's going to flip around and go right back the other way. Now, we did get the test in some of the markets. For example, on the Russell. The Russell actually came back into that high, I believe. Now on the Russell, we actually don't have a support zone there, but you can imagine that is going to be the first spot that they're going to look to buy. 1182, we got down to 1177. So you test into it, you're doing 327 back into 337, and there was no volume up there to begin with, but there's absolutely no volume as you come back in. And if you look in those three big bars, right, these were the big bars on all of them, right? Those are the ones on all the indexes. They look the same. That's the 28th, the 3rd, and the 4th. So that was the peak, the Russian scare, and then the takeaway bar the next day that drove it higher. Those three bars, that area is an area where you have to expect some folks are going to show up and buy, and those that shorted are probably going to want to close out their positions. Russell trades under it, back over it, less volume. Again, that one wants to go back up and test towards the highs again. Nasdaq. The Nasdaq got back into that same area, right? Those tri-star bars, gets back in there, it does the exact same thing. And each of these you look at, they're all doing the same thing. They're coming back into an area where you should see some buyers show up. That's what's happening. I can't see anything negative about the way this traded. Yesterday or last night, we thought we would see more pressure this morning. Question was, would they be able to push it lower? Answer, no. They're not going to. They're gonna buy this thing on every dip, right, and try to take it back higher, and especially on gap downs, they view that as a gift anymore. So what's the bottom line here? The bottom line is they're going to go test the highs again. Now the problem, if there is a problem, is that each time you test back into these areas, right, each time you come back in here, it makes it a little bit harder to find support the next time back. In other words, view it as a supply-demand equation. There is demand at this price point, and let's just say you bought it today at this price point. Lucky you, right? You got a nice big spike back up. Well, if it comes back down there, are you going to add at that same price point again? Well, if you're scaling in, no, you're not going to want it at that price point unless you end up selling it up here, right? But a lot of people just don't want to sell. But if you sell it up here, then you might add it back down here again. Most folks are going to wait for something lower the next time, right? Maybe it gets back down to here and they buy it the next time. The point is that you eat up the demand each trip back. So you had a trip back here, you have another trip back here, right? The third time down, there's usually not nearly as much demand as there is the first and second times. So we've used up essentially 2 of the 3 potential places that they're going to buy this thing. And when you view it from that perspective, right, the odds next time are not going to be nearly as good as they were this time. And in fact, they actually favor the sellers the third time around, whereas the first 2 they favor the buyers. So the bottom line here is that if you don't take out the tops and make a new high, right, and you flip back around to go test the other side again, then you have the potential for something a little bit larger to the downside. So if you're all happy that this market can't go down, realize next trip down, if in fact we can't break out higher, may have some more problems than we had this time around. So that's probably the biggest take, the biggest thing the biggest point to get across. If I go look at the world, and with the Crimea problem this weekend on Sunday, makes it pretty hard to do a lot of buying on Friday. So if they're going to do some buying, it's probably going to be tomorrow and take them back up towards the top maybe, and get stuck up there. Let's go look at the world markets and see how they look. We'll start with our friends in Australia. So Australia, we were talking about they were probably going to come down and test, and that's exactly what they did. They came down and tested again. They don't have the volume. This thing's going to go right back up and test the top again. So Australia flips around, little kind of a hammer. Looks to me like Australia will flip back around and try to go test the tops. And I would think they do it right away. And just like just what I just talked about, 2 trips down already here. right? Third trip won't be nearly as nice, more than likely, here as well. If we look at my Canadian friends, yeah, they don't want to give it up. So they trade down, and Canada's kind of in this special situation right now where they kind of have two kind of small zones. This one tested all the way back into the lower part of the lower zone, flips back around, closes at the higher. This should test the tops again tomorrow and try to break them out. If not, right, then it's going to come test those lows again. Canada's in pretty good shape. I suspect Canada's probably going to still trade higher. Let's look at Europe, since Europe is the one that's got all the fallout with Ukraine. So this doesn't look bad here on the CAX. So the CAX comes into this area here, right? The bottom of the previous bar down. Trades less volume than there. It's also coming into the bottom of this bar. It's got a little bit more volume, but the big bar over here is what the anchor is, and got a lot of volume over there. CAC's going to flip around, at least test back up into this resistance zone, it looks like. Yeah, that's the way that one shapes up. So still had a gap down, right? But it probably will try to close that gap tomorrow and test these bars again tomorrow. So CAX doesn't look too bad. Going to try to bounce. Let's see what the FTSE looks like. FTSE's probably getting hit because of the copper, right? They got a lot of metal stocks on the London Exchange, and other than gold, most of them are struggling. The industrial metals. Yeah, that doesn't look so good, does it? The only good thing is this one will bounce, but it's going to come right back again probably, right? So it tests into this low, right? A lot of volume there. You don't have nearly the same amount of volume. It's going to flip around, come back up, test here, potentially test up into there. So this zone. So it'll get a bounce tonight. Try to get back to the top of that bar. Let's see what the DAX looks like. So the DAX, well, what do we got going on here? Wow, this looks like trouble. So the DAX is going to test these lows before this is done. And it looks to me like the DAX ain't going to get much bounce at all. And that's with decent numbers coming out of there. Alright, so you had an ABCD down here that completed. You got another one that also completed. And now you got another one in place that's not quite done, will be done when it completes down to here. I don't think you're going to see much bounce here. A little bit of a bounce, and then it's probably going to press all the way down here by the end of the week. So if that's true of the DAX, then going back with the thoughts on the others, London's not going to give you much of a bounce, which is what we thought. And the CAX could get a better bounce, but then it's going to come back. So Europe is going to struggle come Friday probably. A little bounce tomorrow. I don't know if it'll hold all day or not, but a bounce tomorrow, and then probably come back. Given our market's behavior today, we'll probably support Europe once we get open, and then we'll see Friday. Friday's probably going to be a tough day for Europe. Let me go look at Asia. Hong Kong traded down big last night, it looked like, and so that one came down pretty hard. What's interesting, this is going to bounce from here though. What's interesting with the Hong Kong market is it traded down, and if you look at the EEM, for example, the emerging markets, of which this is a big component, it was flat today. This thing's going to bounce tonight. It's going to come right back up into this area and try to close the gap. So tonight, tomorrow, just going to try to close this gap. It did break a swing point low here. It's only on this time frame. Yeah, I would think it bounces. So Hong Kong probably bounces tonight. Let me see about Taiwan, because Taiwan was going to try to test those highs and bounce. and it came into those highs, and it doesn't have the volume. This one's going to bounce. This is chips, and I saw our chips bouncing pretty good today, so that's probably part of that. Nikkei was down, I think, last night. Yeah, and when we were on air, one of the members told me it was down 1%. This looks like it's going to bounce as well. So Asia looks to trade higher. Europe's going to get some sort of a smallish bounce. We look like we're going to go higher tomorrow, but it looks like it's all going to last for about a day because Europe's going to be under pressure probably on Friday going into Sunday. Okay, let me look real quickly at the Ox market, see if there's anything different there. I suspect, and I haven't looked, but I suspect these major sectors all look the same. Let me just flip through these real quick and see if there's anything notable here. So pop into these. IYT, nothing there. That looks fine. SMHs, I know these flipped around today and had no volume. That's interesting. So they go right back to the highs with no volume. But you know it's a takeaway bar even with no volume. Did a complete takeaway. That thing's going to go higher. That's the semis. XLB. So the materials, these guys have been struggling. They just closed the gap. But notice on almost all of these now, you still got almost all of these holding that higher range, right? Holding the breakouts, holding the higher ranges. And that was true last night, and it looks like it's probably going to be true tonight as we flip through these. XLE, not SLE, how about XLE? XLE is the energy, and it's still held, and it tested that bottom. This one's going topside again. It's going to go try to test the top again. That should help the S&Ps. XLF, financials, held the top high range, tested into a swing point high. That's a retest, regen, and it's successful. So last night it tested into it. Tonight it tested deeper. Remember, if you come back within 6 bars, you usually try to get to the bottom side of that swing point high. That high's low was 21.97. We got down to 22.03. So we got within about 6 cents, no volume. It's going to flip around and go back the other way. XLI. So the industrials, now that one tested into the swing point high as well. Doesn't have as much volume. Also going to go back upside. Looks like that one will successfully regenerate. XLK, and that one's okay. It's just holding. It actually got into the lower range, but closed up in the higher end again. XLP, I believe you're going to continue to see people move into this. So if you're looking for a sector that's kind of a slow mover that has the potential to continue working higher, XLP might be your answer. XLU, utilities, safety stocks, move back in. They're going to go back and test at least the top end of this. Another 20-30 cents it looks like. XLV, the healthcare. Okay, I believe these are going to range trade for a while, and they're doing that, and it kind of looks it's going to be a while because they did huge volume at the tops. That pretty much puts them in a range. So XLY now, look at this one. It's amazing how they do this stuff. So remember we were talking, this was a retest regen off this high, and you had another high right below it. So just like we saw about a week ago, where the S&P 500 and the Russell got underneath and then somehow hung on, this one did the same thing. And let me see what the volumes are. 3.6. The breakout was 4.3. You came back with 4.2. Not enough volume. It's going to flip back up, head back up again. So sector-wise looks fine. Looks like they're going to try to work back higher. Let's look at the TLT. Ox markets, see what they did. We'll start with the long bond. Now the long bond had a weak bounce, but then today got a pretty good push. No volume though. There's still 2 ranges here, and then the big range itself. Top range is up here. Bottom range is about the equidistance down below. You're going right back into it, and you're going to test it tomorrow. You're going to try to get back into that bar one more time. It did not, on a non-adjusted basis, get to that high the last time up. So the test is here tomorrow. If you get up and in there, right, then you can push to the top again. If not, well, you're going to play in the bottom range some more. Bonds, you know, it's hard to tell what they want to do. Right now, they're just range trading. I suspect they are going to go up and at least test that high before it's over with. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them get a suspect breakout over that high, which, if it happens, you know, you're going to have 2 swing point highs hanging up here now. I could get you the juice to get you up here somewhere, right? Then you come back to a retest regen. And what does that mean? Think about how this plays out, right? You get a nice move up. ABCD structures all the way up, blow off volume finally, right? That puts you in some sort of a range trade. Okay, so you range trade for a while. Eventually, if you break out top side over the high volume range, whether it's here, whether it's farther over, what does that do? Well, when you scoot on up to wherever you're going, and then you come back down, what does that retest regen look like? Now you're going against this volume on the retest. That's going to be very hard to break it down, right? And that usually leads to more upside. So if this thing breaks topside, you know, it will probably get more upside. It'd be suspect, get a retest regen, and then try to regenerate higher. Let's look at I want to look at the shorter term ones. Let me go to like 3 to 7. Yeah, about the same thing, not that much difference. Let me quickly look at the dollar. They're trying to beat out the bottom on the dollar here. And they are trying hard. So they test again on these lows. Remember, they've already broken a low. They're testing on the weekly. Let me pull the weekly over for you. So they're testing on the weekly as well. They're not going to have the volume on the weekly. This thing looks like it's going to probably bounce for now, but dollar is in serious trouble, and I guess that's what continues to support the gold, because the gold keeps finding a bid. All right, let me take some of your questions. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so Federico asked about HY, and then Tommy's asking about CLF. And do I see Europe giving us problems on Friday? So I'll address these two first, and then we'll take and try to answer the European question as part of a wrap-up. So let's see here, HY. So HY is what? This is in the consumer discretionary. History Yale materials. Let me see what these guys do right quick. Bear with me a second. So I like the way it's coming back. Federico's getting to where he pulls out some pretty nice stocks nowadays. Had a good one yesterday, I think, if I remember right. So these guys do engineers, manufacture, sell, service line of lift trucks and aftermarket. So this is kind of like a Caterpillar type thing. It's not earth movers, but it's lift trucks. So you broke out over multiple swing point highs. You got a nice push up, right? Now you're coming back. You don't have the volume as you test back into support. That looks pretty decent. On the weekly, it was also a breakout on multiple swing. That's pretty powerful. Okay, so we've talked about this many times. You know, when you go over multiple swing point highs and you do it on multiple time frames, right? It's the longest time frame, 2 to 3 bars up. 1, 2. So you got your 2 bars up. Now you got a retest, or actually you got a pullback. This high is 96.66. You got as low as 98.87. Okay, so that's that. Yeah. You could trade as low as 98, pretty easy. You know, almost got there today, but yeah, this is, you know, it's not a bad place to start picking at it. I don't see anything wrong with it. Looks pretty good to me. So yeah, looks fine. Iron ore getting killed, CLF. Yeah, I think all the metals, anything industrial, right, is getting kind of hammered. Cliffs Natural Resources. So what is the question here? Will it hold that recent bottom? So these guys are industrial metals. They do iron ore and some coal, I think. low is 1842. $8.7. No, I think this is going lower, my friend. Let me see what the weekly looks like. Yeah, so if I pull the weekly over, yeah, this is going to trade lower. You got two problems going on. First of all, there's an ABCD structure on the downside, right? You got an ABCD that's going to play out down into these lows, or at least try to. And you got some support coming in right up here. So a little bit farther down probably first, maybe a little bounce or something. But if it holds down here, it's an ABCD structure on the downside. Okay, so that's the first problem. The second problem is here, you broke on this break. You broke it with more volume, right? The volume here is heavier than the volume back here on that low. So that gives you a confirmed break, right? Which gives you a higher probability that it will continue. And you tested back today now with 7.3 into the break, which was 12.2, right into this low, which was 8.7. So you test into it, you got no juice, this thing's going to go lower. So no, I don't think it's going to hold. Let's go back to, so you're thinking 15? Yeah, I think the lows, first you'll get into that 1675 area, Tommy, and then you could go all the way to 15. But yeah, I think it's got a shot at 15. ABCD structure will point to that too. Going back to Europe, do I think Europe's going to give us problems on Friday? I think that Europe is going to have a hard time Friday, and by extension, it will keep us from lagging away. So, if I go back to the GSP here and the GSPC, the S&P 500. Given what happened today, it looks to me like we're going to get back into the top of this bar, 1876. We closed at 1868. So we can easily tack on 8 points tomorrow and potentially, right, go after the highs again. If we get over those highs, it'll be a different story, but I don't think we will. I think we're going to get stuck right in between there somewhere tomorrow at best, right? Somewhere in here. If true, and if Europe has a tough time on Friday, we're probably going to see some sort of a gap down thing on Friday. And then we're going to be up here just trying to hold this range again. So more than likely, yeah, Friday, we get another day up tomorrow, and then we're going to find that we're going to have some more pressure probably on Friday. And then come Sunday, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. Monday may be hard because Monday you actually are going to get, it appears that vote is going to be to secede or whatever you want to call it, right, join the Russian Federation. If that's true, then Monday you're going to see sanctions come out, and that's going to be hard as well. So I think Friday, Monday are going to be tough. Next week you also get the Federal Reserve with Yellen, so you're going to have something coming in there too. So it looks to me like this is going to be some sideways stuff here for a while. I don't think it's going to quit. All right, folks. Thanks a lot for joining me. As always, I appreciate it. Tell a friend. If you haven't, do tell a friend. Right? Shoot an email over. Say check out this site. I know there's a lot of you that view this both here in the archives and also over on YouTube. And I speak to each of you saying, there is a program that is out there to give you free service, right? You can earn free service. All you got to do is tell somebody, they join, you get service for 3 months, free, complete, presto, right? Magic. So check it out. Tell somebody. Help us spread the word. Help us help you. I'm LA. That is. And what was your daily TA wrap? Take care of yourself. And remember, tomorrow night, no show. I'm out. I'll catch you again on Sunday. Unless you're a subscriber, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great one. Good night, folks.